Hello, I'm Deborah Malone, founder of The Internationalist and host of Internationalist Marketing TV. Today's guest is Joanne Davis of Joanne Davis Consulting. Joanne, what a pleasure to see you. Welcome to the show. Always looking forward to our conversations.
Oh, thanks so much, Deb. I'm really happy that we could get together today and talk
One,
about some of our favorite topics.
absolutely favorite topics. You're absolutely right. Well, look, let's start with the big picture. You do a tremendous amount of work with clients and agencies in terms of preserving relationships, coaching, and preparing both parties for searches whenever that's necessary. So let's just start very generally. It seems to me that there's more change now than ever, particularly among agencies, not only in the departure of top talent, but also in terms of new ways of working, whether it's fractionalized ad roles, as well as new types of specialist agencies with focus on Web3 or Web 3.0 or AI-powered media or data strategy. Is this fallout from COVID, or is it the constant acceleration of technology, or is it something bigger?
I think, Deb, it's three things. It's the constant acceleration of technology for sure. I mean, a few months ago, no one knew what ChatGPT was. And now there are headlines about teachers are worried, kids are using ChatGPT to do their homework, right? So I think that's one dynamic. Technology is moving like a rocket to the moon. Number two is COVID. And the bigger piece, the fallout from COVID, and the bigger piece is the malaise that's going on that was catapulted by COVID. I don't want to work in the office. I do want to work on the office. The 20-somethings want to work in the office because the office is their living room because they can't afford a big place to live. The 30-plus somethings don't want to work in the office. The 40 and 50-plus somethings who are the bosses have to work in the office for training. And so there's a malaise, there's a divisiveness going on in the country with the left versus the right, and it's perpetuating a feeling of disruption and confusion. And I think, Deb, I mean, we've all been reading the news the past few weeks. It's not just change of people at the agency side. Mamma mia, look at what happened with AB and InBev. I mean, that has been a stunning piece of information with the change going on with expectations and standards for corporations in terms of balancing the respect for your constituents and balancing the respect for future consumers of your products. So there's just a big swirl of change going on.
Yeah, no, you make some very good points, and that is always such an interesting dynamic in terms of whether you call it shareholders and stakeholders or your constituents or your future consumers. It does make it really challenging, and also just speaking of news, I mean, in the last couple of days, some of the news, and this might be a little bit more on the agency side, but everything comes so fast and furious. I think that I read that John Wren declared that the Great Resignation is over. We saw that RGA laid off 15% of its US staff. There's now 4 creative shops combined under Crispin Porter. And Ad Age's agency report, which I believe came out yesterday, suggested that the agency business is transforming from creating ads to creating change. So, I mean, would you say the industry is at an inflection point in terms of the business of clients working with agencies?
I do. In my decades in the business, Deb, the change going on today is more extensive and more rapid than we've seen in the last 30 years. And it's fueled by technology. It's fueled by impatience on the part of the talent, both client side and agency side. It's fueled by pressure. and risk. Ultimately, the marketer is under enormous pressure, and there's great risk with doing something brave or staying the course. So how do I maintain market share? Well, that's not good enough. I have to grow market share. To grow market share, I might have to do something risky. How much risk can I afford to take? So that pressure that's on the part of marketers has resulted in pressure to agencies, all kinds of service providers, more, better, faster. I don't want to pay more. It's precious few marketers who will say, I'd rather pay a little bit more to get the A team. I'd rather pay a little bit more to get more senior people versus junior people. So that's basically the cycle of what's going on.
It's interesting that you say that, because I was at a conference some time ago, and Martin Sorrell was speaking, and he basically said that there's three things that marketers want now: better, faster, cheaper. And I mean that it's a wonderful catchphrase, but it might be right. I mean, the speed. Someone else said to me that long-term planning now is 2 weeks. But
Correct.
it's a little bit of a funny way of saying it. But people seem to be trying to come up with some solutions of their own. And I'm not sure that that always makes sense. I mean, you can look at, for example, the growth in in-house agencies. Now, I don't know if that was in response to the need for more data and data privacy. I'm not sure, but I think that a lot of clients have really underestimated the development needs of some in-house agencies, just to make sure that they're successful and well functioning. I don't know. What do you find? Is there a different set of standards for in-house agencies now than there are for anything else?
There are different types of internal resources. Let's be clear. Virtually every client corporation with whom we work has some sort of internal operation. And it may be the internal graphic studio. It may be the internal studio. It may be the folks that take the big idea that a fancy branding agency or a premier creative agency develops as the big idea. And as a marketer, I don't want to overpay the A+ talent to do the shelf talkers, the menu tray liners, if it's a QSR, the banners, the posters. So why pay the overhead for an external agency to do things that someone else can do perfectly well? Point one. Point two, internal is more about maintaining the brand standards. And to Martin's point, and I agree with it, more, better, faster. And the joke used to be, pick two of the three. You can have more, you can have better, you can have faster. That's not true anymore. With the speed of technology, marketers want all three. But there are very few corporations that have true internal agencies. Apple is one, Target is one. The vast majority, they're not agencies. They're creative studios, they're resources. So the standards are different. Apple internal agency and TBWA compete for the same high value work. At Target, the internal agency does good stuff too, not just the shelf talkers. So for brands of that magnitude, size, scope, scale, prestige, they can justify it. But XYZ Bank on the corner may not be able to justify a true bona fide internal agency, but they darn well will have great internal creative resources for versioning and production.
Now, wasn't that once just the marketing department, or?
Way back when.
Oh, well, look, let's shift a little bit between to client agency relationships, because you're quite well known for something very clever, which is called "Can This Marriage Be Saved?" And I just love that concept, because it is a marriage in many ways. Um, just tell us a little bit about the motivation today behind an agency review and when clients feel it's necessary.
Usually it's you get to the brink. When a marketer or a procurement executive calls us and calls me and says, "Can you help me with an agency review?" I say, "Yes, but what have you done to try to save the relationship?" And it's almost like a journalist going through the who, what, where, when, why questions. What have you told them? Well, I haven't really told them. Well, what do you mean you haven't told them that there's a problem? Well, my vice president of marketing told them, or procurement told them. Who at the senior level of your enterprise has had a conversation at a senior level at the agency to talk about the concerns? And so, hum, hum, hum. And so you get to the point where it's like, okay, I haven't really. So let's have a pre-review. Let's have a review of one. Let's have a very candid conversation about the expectations and put a timeline to it. Now, if you've tried to have a pre-review, honest top-to-top conversations, and you do have to go to review, external review, it's usually because you're just not in sync. You're saying X and the agency's saying Y. The client's saying, I want an edgy campaign. The agency's saying, define edgy. And the marketer's saying, you should know what I mean by edgy. You've worked on my business for 3 years. Well, no, I'm a new member of the creative team. Does edgy mean a drag queen? Does edgy mean profanity? Can we curse? Can we go that far in edgy? And the marketer says, no, 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 we're not that kind of edgy. We're more edgy like Ted Lasso. Well, there's cursing in Ted Lasso. So you get my point. It's when the alignment is out of sync that you got to look elsewhere. And the advice we give to every marketer is let's be 100% crystal clear on what the pain points are and what we're looking for the new agency to solve, because frankly, it makes so much sense. If the problem's at home, at the client, a new agency is not going to fix that. So let's take a breath and see if we can fix and improve what may be dysfunctional on the client side before we go out to bid.
That makes so much sense. And there you probably have dozens of reasons as to why someone should stay in the relationship, so to speak. Talk about them, and then once you go through them, tell us when they really should look for someone else.
You should stay in the relationship if you need the agency for the institutional history. Some marketers rotate people more frequently than agencies do, and the agency holds the history. You should stay if the agency has the ability to bring in a sibling agency or a partner. I mean, it's easier with agencies that are owned by holding companies, because we can say, maybe you don't have the skill set because you're more of a traditionalist and I need more data and digital. So perhaps one of your sibling agencies would be a better fit. You should stay in the relationship if you look internally and know that you haven't been a good client and you're making some changes. For example, you had a bad nickel in your management group. You had someone who was a little bit toxic and didn't share information, and you moved him or her out, and now you have a refreshed client team and you've got a good agency. So let the new teams try to gel together. You should stay if you have a launch upon you that is like in 3 weeks, because we all know going through a review is time consuming and takes money, and there's a ramp up period. So can you work effectively? Timeout sessions, joint whiteboard sessions, work together to accomplish the launch where it's ticking. The clock is ticking. We've got to be in the market with it. So those are a handful of good reasons to stay, to try harder. I mean, during the pandemic, I remember a couple of marketers calling and saying, we'd like to have a review. And I'd say, well, here are the pros of having the review. Here are the cons of having the review. Take it to executive management and let me know what you decide. And executive management comes back and says, try harder.
Right. So if someone gets the message that they have to try harder, how do you go about repairing a relationship when there's a perception that that relationship is broken in some way?
It really is almost like marriage counseling. You start ground zero. And in many cases, it's easier with a client agency marriage than a couple marriage because there's just two of you if it's a couple, right? If in a client and agency, there may be other people. So first, let's refresh the team. Second, let's have a really honest share out. One exercise I'm very fond of is bring 3 pieces of work you think are great and 3 pieces of work you think aren't great. And let's gauge each other's taste level and standards. And so, if the marketer brings Nike and I'm the agency and I'm excited thinking, oh, Nike, yeah, big, successful, swoosh. You don't even need words and the swoosh. And the marketer says, that's one I don't like. That tells me what their taste level is. So I will, as an agency leader, staff differently.
That's
So
extraordinary. I mean, it almost takes really just so much intuition. I mean, again, you're talking about human relationships in many ways, but those are not easy. You gave some really great specific examples, and I know that you can't share a tremendous amount of information, particularly if it's confidential. But is there another example that pops into your mind about a relationship that was saved?
yeah, I'll give you a good one. The category was financial services, financial insurance services. And the client and agency had been together for several years. The head account person's husband got a new job in Europe. And so she was going to France with her husband and her kids. The agency succeeded her with a guy whom the agency thought was great, but the client didn't think so much of him. And so the client actually called me and said, can you help us with a review? And I said, probably. What's the issue? And he told me we had Madam X and now we have Mr. Y and we don't like Mr. Y. I'm like, okay. What do you think about the strategic people? Oh, they're good. What do you think about the creative product? Oh, it's good. So the only problem is Mr. Y? Yeah, pretty much. I'm like, did you talk to the agency CEO? No. My vice president talked to the head of client services about Mr. Y. I'm like, with all due respect, sir, pick up the phone. I know that CEO of the agency. He's a really good, fair, straight shooter. Call him and tell him that Mr. X is not the right successor for Madam Y, for Madam X. Mr. Y is not the right successor for the woman who went to France. So he did. And he called me back 2 months later and he said, thank you for saving me from having a review.
Oh, that's a wonderful story. I mean, not to beat this to death, but in your mind, what are the biggest warning signs then that that the marriage needs a little counseling?
The senior people from the agency not coming, the agency canceling meetings at the last minute or sending junior people, the agency repeatedly getting things wrong, the agency not returning phone calls as promptly as they used to. I mean, all those, start adding them up, starts to become like a little house of cards falling over.
What about on the client side? Are there behaviors on the client side that an agency can almost start to say, this guy is not happy. And
Yeah.
shouldn't the agency also jump in and look for a little counseling?
Totally. The warning signs, the drum beats for an agency, when a client is starting to fall out of love, the senior clients aren't coming to the meetings. The senior clients are coming late. The senior clients aren't available to take their calls. The senior clients don't take their calls and have somebody junior return the call later. So if I were the agency leader and my client was suddenly not communicating with me, I would go on their doorstep and say, please, time out. What are we doing wrong? Something's amiss. But if you're behaving properly, you shouldn't have to get to that.
Oh, that is, and are there, now you've opened up a can of worms. Are there standards of proper behavior, or is that really just humanity?
I think it's humanity. I mean, what do you do when somebody doesn't call you back? Well, you're Deb Malone. Everybody wants to
Oh,
call you.
get out. No, no, but you do no. Listen, the first thing you do is you think that people are extraordinarily busy. The next thing that you do is you just try to keep up with them. That's all, right?
Well, you give them the benefit of the doubt first, right? But if the prior behavior is, I usually hear back before the day is out, and you don't hear back, you think, if there isn't an auto reply, out of office on vacation, in Hawaii for my honeymoon, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, then you're cool. But if behavior changes, some folks are fond of resending the email and write in the subject line saying sending again. Perhaps this got lost because I sent it on a Friday afternoon. Give them a little bit of the benefit of the doubt to try to get them to respond. If you're not getting a response from email, keeping in mind, I saw a study a year or so ago, it may be more now, that said the average American worker gets 200 emails a day. Now, a lot of them are solicitations and things that are not mission crucial. So what's the style of the marketer with whom you want to connect? Is it more email? Is it more text? Is it a phone? I mean, everybody goes walking around with their phones as an extension of their hand, and some people just can't function without texting. There's a client we work with who really hates email, and he either texts or he uses LinkedIn, chat in LinkedIn. That's the way this guy
Yeah.
likes to communicate. So, and he loves talking on his cell phone. So it's knowing enough about your client to know that there are different ways that are better to communicate than others. And if it's the style of the person is such that they're not going to return that email, and if they're senior enough to have an admin, try through the admin. But, Martin Sorrell said a long time ago, client and agencies are partners, but the client is the more senior partner and the agency is the more junior partner. So, unlike marriage, where it should be an equal partnership, but I mean, we get it. That was a very wise thing that Sir Martin said. So if I'm the junior partner and I'm trying to get the attention of the senior partner, I've got to find a way to get through that wall to get the feedback and information I need in order to be effective for them. Best
Yeah.
case, worst case, not lose it.
Yes, you make a good point. And so has this evolved now? I mean, are people finding it harder to communicate, even though we have all these tools to communicate with? I mean, it seems crazy.
I know it seems crazy, but we're on information overload. I mean, an hour ago, I might have looked at my emails and thought, okay, I've taken care of everything that needs to be taken care of. And when we hang up, there are going to be a couple hundred more right there. It's information overload. And I think it's there's FOMO, fear of missing out. There's just so much. And we sign up for newsletters and alerts and extra information so that we learn and we're on the cusp of everything. And trade associations send out a half dozen a day, and the trade press sends out a half dozen a day, and breaking news. I mean, and Fox News, you get pings on your phone so you don't miss it. I was in the dentist and my Fox News alert went off, and the dentist said, "Oh, I get them too." So there's more information than ever, is one dynamic. And the other big dynamic is because there's so much information, we're somehow forgetting a little bit of humanity. When I was a young account person, we were friends with our clients. We'd go to their office. They'd have us over to their homes for dinners. We'd go to their weekend houses in the summer for a team building exercise. There was a humanity and a friendship when we didn't have phones as extensions of our fingers, where we worked with people. People work with people. Agencies don't work with marketers. People work with people. And that's what I think has been forgotten. I mean, we've all had the experience, Deb, where we've been out to dinner and you see a family of 4 and they're not talking to each other. They're all on their phones. Right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. No, absolutely. And hopefully we can, there maybe with awareness, we can change some of that. So now that we're on a note about humanity, what do you see ahead for the business? I mean, will there be a continuation of the pace of changes as we see it now? Will there be greater stabilization? Will there be more turnover? Are you optimistic? Are you pessimistic? What's ahead?
I'm ever the optimist, and I believe what Sister Patricia Michael taught me in the 2nd grade: change is our friend. So we have to embrace change. And Sister Patricia was exactly right. I mean, things are way back then, things weren't changing the way they are now. We didn't have phones in our computers in our pockets, right? I'm optimistic. Things will continue to change. I mean, for example, I had a client-side marketer ask me the other day if tools like ChatGPT would mean they could have fewer FTEs at agencies. And I said, no, absolutely not. ChatGPT is a tool, and you need someone to operate the tool. So there will be new jobs. There'll be new roles. There'll be AI producers, new talent. So I think there are very exciting possibilities ahead if we're prepared to embrace change and harness it and accept the fact that we need new roles to drive these amazing pieces of equipment.
Oh, you make a good point, and I think that I also think it's great that you honored Sister Patricia today. Well, certainly changes, change continues, and it'll be interesting to just keep up with you and wind up seeing a little bit on that change barometer. If there are certain areas that we're seeing. I don't mean the shiny object thing. I'm just talking about systemic change or just big shifts in an industry. And I think that is always an interesting thing to look out for. And I can't think of anyone better to have an eye on it than you.
Well, thanks so much, Deb. And thank you for the thoughtful and interesting questions. And I look forward to sharing with you in the future.
Excellent. Thanks so much. Thanks so much for being part of the show.
Thank you, Deb. Bye-bye.
Bye. The Internationalist focuses on the continual reinvention of marketing by highlighting inspirational marketers around the world and their ideas as they move the industry forward. Internationalist Marketing TV shares these perspectives through interviews and personal stories. Thanks so much for watching. If you find this kind of content helpful, please click like or subscribe. Again, thanks so much.